Eran, welcome.
As you can see, we're using the same airbrush. Thank you for the airbrush and the...
You're looking great, my friend. Great to see you. Me and Eran caught up last night. A couple of beers in the bar, which is always a good start for a couple of business guys getting together and putting ideas together for today. You went to bed before me, though, Eran, forever the professional.
But I went to establish another startup. I told you I'm going to bed, but I just went to establish another startup. No, I'm just kidding. I fell down. Too many beers.
Great to see you, mate. Look, we're going to talk about NanoLock, your own journey, your advice for the business owners here. First of all, tell everyone, please, about what it is you do, your journey, what it is that's brought you here today.
Sure. Number one, we have an office in Newcastle. So one of my, the general manager that takes responsibility for the UK, Europe, I'm differentiating between them because you had the Brexit. It was before together, now it's the UK, Europe, and APAC is based in Newcastle. So I had the opportunity to be known to this community and the region. NanoLock is a cybersecurity company with a slightly different journey in protecting critical assets, electricity, water, manufacturing, food production. And there's a lot of knowledge in the UK about that, being one of the biggest players in the energy sector at least, or also the water sector. So I'm here because of this is a region that is of our interest. I know some people. And it was a pleasure to be invited here. My personal journey, if I can tell a bit of the background, before NanoLock, this is actually my fifth startup, but I was not able to sell all of them. I sold a few of them. I did have failures. But this is from 2016, after my tenure as a consultant to the Nanoscience Technology Center of the Tel Aviv University, when I came across the technology that is behind NanoLock. And, well, it was a technology behind NanoLock until the NSA put some cold water on our heads, and we had to change technology. But that's a different story. And at this point, the connection to this event is through my presence here in the UK and on the business side.
How big a threat is cybersecurity? How, does it keep you awake at night?
Well, cybersecurity, I don't know about everything in cybersecurity. So there are a lot of ways, and it's definitely a big risk, whether it's a state level, whether it's a financial reason, whether it's for fraud, theft, or bringing a country to its knees. I can promise you the following. It is a big issue. It is a way for both countries and organizations to fight each other for different reasons. Our specific expertise is the energy, the critical infrastructure, and it's mainly looking at threats from the inside and supply chain. So you have threats from the outside. So if I tell you cybersecurity, tell me the Chinese hackers or the Russian hackers or the Iranian hackers trying to infiltrate. That's one kind of a risk, which is complicated, but this is protecting the perimeter. The emerging world where you have longer distribution cycles, when you have many people working for you, but you never met them inside an organization. So you have an entity that is, so we're working in South America, and you have headquarters in one of the nicest cities, but you have a supply chain and customers all the way to the poorest areas where fraud, theft on a local basis is more common or accessible. So cyber is not just you'll never have electricity, it's also I'll take 20% of your electricity bill, I'll reduce it, I'll share it with my partners, and we'll make money. So it is a risk, it's an emerging risk. And the more complicated the financial and the economy situation in the world, the more differences there are between the people that has the money and the poorest people, it will grow. I promise you that.
We all have that sort of nightmare, don't we, that you wake up one morning and you look at your bank account and all the money's gone. I mean, it happens to me most mornings. I realize I just spent
Correct.
it all. But, that sort of fear that, everything's online now, everything's done on computers, and, someone can get into your business account and remove your money, or they could remove a country's money. It's a very real risk. There'll be people here probably prefer to go back to the way it was before, but how does NanoLock work to to sort of protect against things like that?
Number one, what you just described is called connectivity. The more connected you are, the more you are at more risk. That's number one. So the easiest thing is to write on a piece of paper and give it to someone. So that's less of a risk. And to be honest, I don't know how to stop your bank accounting from draining, or anyone's, for other reason. Again, critical infrastructure is different. These are machines. The way we work, and in a second, I don't want to go too technical, but when you're in the financial sector, the idea is I want to come in, steal your money. And that's one kind of an attack. When you speak about critical infrastructure, it's about I need to put my software inside. It has to be there lurking for months, weeks, years to come, like Russia done for Ukraine in 2017, where the attack was there for a few years and it was used when it was needed to be. So we're protecting what is called persistent attacks. And again, in the financial sector, it's less common. In critical infrastructure, that's basically the idea, because you need to synchronize many devices and decide when are you going to attack or manipulate that. And so unfortunately, I cannot help you with the financial side, but I can tell you that the nature of the attacks is similar. Somebody's trying to get access. The way to get access is either coming from the outside and guessing something, but if I can convince you to give me your password, which is probably Pete 1234 or Pete, one of the birthdays of one of your kids.
I told you that last night, did I, after a couple of pints?
You did, but again, that's social engineering.
Yeah.
Whether that's the password, I promise you I will guess it. I promise you. You're a family man, so your password is related to your family. Somewhere or the other, I'll guess it. Or I'll convince you to give it to me. Or I'll convince you to go against the organization you're working in. And that's the new level of threat out there.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to protect from. And all comes, we spoke yesterday and you asked me how is Israel related to this? So I did come all the way here from Israel. And we have a history of protecting the country, protecting and attacking as part of the protection. So there's a long history of cyber and entrepreneurship in Israel that is now exploiting, I think, both in the amount of companies out there, pretty much successful, both cyber, but not only cyber. And I think I'm very proud to be part of this large community.
It's a hugely important part of modern life, isn't it?
The connectivity?
Yeah.
Yes, it is essential. The revolution is out there. Right, so things will become more and more connected. So we're now doing a large project with the most legacy business out there, making bread. So we're working with one of the largest bread makers in the world. So these are bakeries, but in order to drive production better, they're becoming more and more connected. And that opened an attack vector for their competitors. I'll give you in a second an example, but also for disgruntled employees. And these were real attacks. When we first met with the customer, he said, what's the attack vector? And I said, they're large manufacturers of buns to one of the large food makers in the world. And I said, somebody will change the composition of how many sesame grinds you're putting on the bun, and then you'll send batches of bad products. He said, wow, amazingly we thought about this in order to compete on an account. They wanted to launch the same exact attack. But this is a cyber attack which is I'm not stealing anything. I'm not killing anyone. I'm just taking a $250 million annual business from a customer, from one player to the other, just by changing how many sesame seeds are on top of a bun.
And that could cost them millions.
Hundreds of millions, literally hundreds of millions, yes.
Incredible. What about the link with cybersecurity in the military? I mean, we talk a lot about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and there's talk of like cyber wars and military involvement with attacking countries through computers. I mean, it's a really scary prospect. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Number one, it's a reality. Number two, it is related to civilian things. So if there is a war, you can attack the military side, but you can also create havoc within the population. So if you're attacking the electricity grid in the UK or the traffic light system, and you're creating traffic jams that prevail from military forces moving from one side to the other, that's a legit cyber attack. I promise you, it's already there. So the attack is when you launch the attack and you press the button, But there is software, I promise you, within the British systems as well as the Israelis and the Americans that are waiting for the command to come from, said China, Russia, Iran. It's there, it's already there. And whether it's on the civilian side, which is more complicated to attack because they're well protected, or the more sophisticated attackers, adversaries, are going after the civilian infrastructure in order to harm the critical infrastructure of a country. Israel is unique by, number one, we're a small country, so we have very condensed critical infrastructure, and we need to protect it. So that's from the protection side. That's where NanoLock came. So my co-founder came from being responsible for the protection of the critical infrastructure in Israel, but we do have a very offensive side. We're not involved in that, but we fight our adversaries, which are Iran and alike, by harming, in some cases, their critical infrastructure, signaling that we can do bigger harm, trying to signal them not to go into military actions. So it's there, it's common, and I promise you it's already happened. So the infrastructure is already malwared, in a sense.
For people in the room who've got their own businesses, what's the minimum they should be doing?
It varies. Number one, being aware. Number two, not to be terrified. So just going and doing with your hands like this doesn't help anyone. It's nice, but it's not helping. Smartly assess the nature of the threat. Assess how much you're willing, under the assumption you'll always be attacked. What's the worst case scenario? Maybe it's not a big harm, right? So I'll give you an example. If your business is securing with security cameras at home, worst case scenario that you see you in your underwear, which is embarrassing, it's not catastrophic, given clean underwear. But don't spend millions on protecting your security cameras. Just assess the risk, assess the spending. I would recommend people involved in critical infrastructure or things that can be, if they're vulnerable for somebody doing a ransomware attack or stopping their business from running, the word is running. If somebody can stop you from running, he will take money for that. If your business can still be ran, even if you're being cyber attacked, then don't spend that amount of money.
I mean, it's crazy to me that we all have mobile phones and laptops. They've all got cameras on, microphones in. Every time you write a text message, every time you take a photo, everything you watch online. I mean, don't get me wrong, Eran, I've got absolutely nothing to worry about, right, in any of these situations. But it's scary, right? I mean, someone somewhere can have access to the camera on my phone, to the microphone. Is that real or is that paranoia, do you think?
Well, we're in a forum about entrepreneurs. It's real. You can't make money out of that. Because you won't lose money, again, it's for the media. So if somebody will harm the grid in Newcastle, that's an issue. If somebody will take a look at your texts, and we've been texting last night, okay, it's nice, it's funny, and you'll feel embarrassed, but your life will not be catastrophic, will not be lost. When you're dealing with loss of life, loss of businesses, loss of whatever which is critical, people will pay for that. You will. I promise you. If I come and tell you, I can make your security camera, your cameras in your laptop protected, and you need to pay me £5 a month, you'll never pay me because it's not an issue. You're a public figure. Maybe it's a little bit more, but the average person will not pay for that. So money to be made is when there's money to be lost, and I don't think that's the case in the consumer side of cyber. It's nice for the media, not for business.
Away from the cybersecurity stuff you do, back in Israel, you're a bit of a, a bit like myself, a bit of a big deal, to be fair. You got a podcast, you got a...
Oh, that big deal. Okay, I'm not sure where we went with that.
TV program, I was fascinated to hear you got a comedy series out there, and how do you balance the two sort of very different lives out? Because talking about cybersecurity, we thought you make it sound interesting, but it's, compared to a comedy program, I mean, those two things are poles apart.
Just to be fair, I don't have a comedy program now. So the story is between startups, I've created comedy shows. Some of them were successful, some of them not. Let's focus on the successful ones, please. And I'm still doing on the national radio 3 times a week, 5 minutes. So this is just for me not to speak about cyber threats all day because that will drive you crazy. So it was fun between startups, and I've raised a lot of money for my companies, and I sold some of them. But to make comedy for me is very similar to starting a company. Is you have a white blank page, and you need to get something out. So either it's a good idea for a startup or a bad idea for a startup, it doesn't matter, or a comedy. So it's not a balance. It's either this or that. I never combine them. But when I was fortunate enough to sell a company or less fortunate to close a company, instead of just becoming somebody's employee to rest for 2 years, I created the show. Luckily, I have some kind of a reputation in that, and it's in Hebrew, so it's easier for me than doing comedy in English. And it started opening doors. That's the nice thing, is that we have horrible bureaucracy in Israel, if I call and say, this is Eran from this and this startup, nothing. But if I call and say, this is Eran from the national broadcasting, just solves me the bureaucracy. So I'm doing that just to be able to call people and just shortcut the bureaucracy. The thing is, I hope it's common between the startups and the comedy, is that you can be creative on one side and mission-oriented on the other side. So you got to have an idea, which is same for comedy and a startup, and then you need to lead people, lead investors, or people from the network to buy your stuff. It's the same, and this is the message for the entrepreneurs here, is that eventually you need to be with eyes on the target, whether it's a comedy show, whether it's a good startup, and you got to understand that there are people that needs to listen on the other side, again, versus whether it's the TV studio or investors.
Tell us about, we're going to talk about your startups. One that you're particularly proud of that went very well, and then I'll ask you about one that maybe did not go very well. But let's start with it. Start on the positive.
Start with the positive side.
Start with the positive one. Tell us a story about something that you're most proud of from the businesses that you've started up.
NanoLock. NanoLock, it's a tough ride. So everything I'm telling you now is we started this with a vision that was not there. So when you're doing a startup, you're supposed to have an idea that has a trajectory into what's going to happen 2 or 3 years ahead. So you're not inventing something for today. You are building an entrepreneur, you're building a vision. So it was a very hard ride in the beginning. Then we raised money, quite a lot of money, and then COVID came. And everything we thought of, we were sending people to customers. It was a catastrophic first year. It was just so complicated. We could not meet, we could not travel, we could not listen to the customers, and everybody was in shock. And so the first quarter was horrible in all scenarios, and then we started thinking, and everything good came out of that. We're digitized, we crisped the story. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of the events helped us, whether it's pipeline in the US or the war in Ukraine. All of these things happened up to us. And now we're extremely fortunate and lucky to serve customers, and our vision is delivered and fulfilled. And it was a crazy vision in 2016, and pretty much successful one in 2022. You want a less successful startup or a low time story?
Let's get down there. Let's get to the low time story. When it was the tough times.
It's not tough times. It's just traveling 18 hours to the customer in Japan just to realize that I went to the wrong city. That's, for me, it's the lowest, because we had a customer in one city, so I was used to fly, and it's Tel Aviv, Hong Kong, really long. And then 2 hours by a train, to be embarrassed by the staff at the hotel saying I'm in the wrong city, like the same day, the day was right, just the wrong city. So that's my worst story.
That's all right. You've done pretty well. How do you balance your time? Since I met you last night and noticed that your phone's always ringing, you're constantly on the phone fielding calls, and just give me a minute.
You're opening that in front of everyone.
I'm sorry.
That should be between us, but I apologize for that.
It's an important part for everyone, I think, in here who's got a family, got a partner, and I guess you have to make these phone calls. You have to answer the phone if it rings. Is that an important part of, that connectivity we spoke about?
Yes. Well, family I will always answer, right? So that's not an issue. And I have a son who's in the army and a daughter which is traveling now in Europe, so I'll always take those calls. The complexity, by the way, is running a business that varies from Singapore with the 7 hours time difference, one direction, to a team now in the US on its way here, with the other way around, and people in Israel. So the complexity of running an international business are the time zones. And I try to have a team that is doing that for me, but it comes a time that I need to speak with people. So it's all the way from, is it balanced? No. I don't collapse, but comes a time in the year that I need to take a vacation. And what I try to do in my vacation, so I have family vacations, the time that the kids want to join us. But there are vacations which I'm trying to close my phone and not answer anything. And if I can do that for 2 days, when I'm scuba diving, I have this habit, treat of scuba diving with whales and sharks around the world, or other stuff, but I'm closing the phone and and asking my team not to bother, they're not bothering me, but not to call me if it's not really urgent.
How hard is that, though? I bet there's so many people in this room right now who find it almost impossible to switch off. And even if they're saying to the family, look, I'm not going to look at my phone for the next couple of days, guaranteed they're locking themselves in the toilet a couple of times just to check emails.
Okay.
Do you actually manage to do it, switch off completely?
Okay, not lock myself in the toilets. I want to be specific. It takes time. So scuba diving forces me. So if I'm going far enough, remote enough, the answer is yes. So I'm trying to find if you're going to Europe, you'll answer. 9 out of 10 calls you'll answer. Just look at the phone. I strongly recommend to find the time, whether it's for 1 day or a week. I think it's critical. I do find the time. It took me a while. When I was younger, I always look at the phone. The balance was work before family. At a certain point in time, I think I started finding the balance, or in other words, my family explained to me that I need to find the balance. I've listened. My daughter went to, I'm very proud of her, she went to high school in Hong Kong. So there's a program that you can find, and we had a lot of discussions, and she told me that one of the reasons she went there, and she was 16, going to Hong Kong by herself, is that feeling that she got that the world is her oyster, or in a sense, everything is doable. So it's not only bad to be doing international business, you do need to find the balance in order not to harm your relationship with the kids, but there are also positive things on that.
If you want to go somewhere with bad phone reception, you enjoy that on a holiday, you should just book yourself in here for a couple of weeks, because
Correct.
The signal's really struggling here, it's been great because my wife's not been able to call me at all, so it's been fantastic. How important is it that you get the right team around you? Tell us about your team that you've built, and how important was it that they were the right people?
Wow, it's the story it's even more complicated. So if I'm being very honest, it's completely different team after 2 years. I've changed 90% of the team. So we started the company in 2016. One of my partners passed away in 2017. Left me with a growing business and with a team that I was not able to bring to work together the way I wanted or I thought we should go. And then COVID came, and the major decision I've made is that I cannot work against the market, against COVID, and against my team. And there are two in my team which are, one of them, my CFO is the third startup together, and my CTO, Chief Technology Officer, this is our second startup together. So I had a root of trust within the organization that said, okay, I'm starting with this, but I'm making a change. Then I highlighted to myself, which are the critical positions that I need to change in order to drive the momentum I felt was not good enough. So one of the critical positions in a startup company or a technology company is VP R&D. And I went to search for the right VP R&D that has the technical skills, but more importantly, the personal skills. And I brought someone that came from 19 years in the Israeli Mossad, the equivalent to the NSA or CIA in the US. And that was the best decision I've made. I don't even know if he's the best programmer in the world, but he's definitely the right person that helped me clean up upstream and bring the right people downstream. So that was a critical focal point where I had a root of trust, the first person. Then the second phenomenal choice I did was finding the guy here and he was a consultant to the company for a while, and then I think I can say that we became friends. Is that okay? Is that legit? We became friends and created a trust which allowed me to hand over to someone which I've met 3-4 months before, but I knew had the skills to take a lot of the burden from me in managing teams in a market which I don't know. And that was the second brilliant decision we've made.
I heard Chrissy say the same thing about getting the right people in place. It's so important. And again, there'll be people in this room here today who maybe need that extra pair of hands that they haven't got at the moment. Maybe they're taking too much on themselves. Maybe there's someone within their workforce who isn't quite working for them at the moment in the way they need to. How much does that need to be a priority for their business, that they do get those right pegs in the right holes surrounding them?
It varies. There are people, I'm sure there are people in the room here that can be the solo leader of the company, that has the ability, agility, strength, vision. I'm sure there are people out there. There are other people who want to be part of a community or a group. Honestly, I don't know. The only thing I can strongly recommend is an honest and brutal view in the mirror and giving an answer to this. Do I need an extra pair of hands? Am I willing to pay the price of less holdings in the company? Because once I realized I need partners, I was very generous with options and shares and make them make the same money as I will make, but I need the help and very honest in what is. And the second thing is being very honest is what are your weak parts and where do you need the help? I am a good visionary with good sales skills and a long-term vision. I'm a mediocre to less than a mediocre executioner. And I'm bringing the right people. I'm very honest with what are my less skilled parts. And we're building this around my capabilities and limitations, and there are the other side. Nobody's perfect. So yes, bring people. Yes, being brutally honest on what you need, what they can bring, and vice versa. Respect their advantages and disadvantages the same way.
I'm going to come to the audience in a bit, so have a little think, because I'm sure there will be questions out there about technology, IT, your own security in your own businesses that you may want to ask. So because we've got Eran here, who is one of the most celebrated sort of tech personalities of our time, and you are the man that knows that you've got your finger on the pulse with that. If you've got any questions, do have a think, and I'll come into the audience in just a moment. But tell us about this idea of a tech unicorn and what that means. We had a brief chat about it last night.
Yeah. I hate the term. It's putting a burden. Tech unicorn is a startup that is worth more than $1 billion. Or in other words, this is the Tom Cruise of the startups, and you want to be like this. And this puts a huge burden on the shoulders. Not everybody's born Tom Cruise, not everybody's entitled, and you can still have a very nice life even being a Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, stop giving my secrets away from last night. It's not what you think it is, by the way.
I did my research. But the story is, the idea is, these are all pumped by the media. The unicorns are pumped by the media, and the catastrophe in Wall Street, they're all pumped because these are good stories. You want to have a solid company with solid holdings, amount of shares that you have in the company, that is growing rapidly, that somebody eventually want to take public or buy. That's a good business. In the world of startups, in the world of real businesses, you grow up slightly differently. But trying to aim to a unicorn is trying to make kind of a show-off. It's not. it's better to have 100% of a business that is worth $100 million than 0.5% of a unicorn. From a monetary perspective, from an ego perspective, or showing to your classmates, a unicorn is great. From a realistic perspective, just make the proper calculation. So I'm not encouraging anyone to try to say, everybody with his own ego, but I never thought that having a stamp of this is a unicorn or something, I always kept that the companies will be at a higher valuation, so meaning every time you raise at a higher valuation, that the shareholders will make money, and it's a reasonable amount of money. No need to be just striving for the stars, in my view.
Which is very similar to what Chrissy said about sort of being patient and not always, expanding too quickly, that it's about taking your time. What kind of turnover does NanoLock make, if you don't mind me asking? What's sort of the targets for next year?
So this year we'll make about $5 million in what is called ARR versus about $12 million in booking. And if we continue the 300% growth next year, so that's the target for next year. I think we'll be on target because we're signing up new customers at a good pace. We're bringing some investors who are also customers of the company, so everybody's motivated for the growth of the company. And there's such a huge amount of bad guys out there, and I encourage them to continue attacking every infrastructure they see in the most visible way.
Anyone got any questions out there about your own IT needs, cyber security? You want to put a hand up?
By the way, I'm not doing IT consulting. I have but I'm clueless with computers.
Okay. No computer questions. I'm going to come over to you, sir.
Before you're sending me up with gigs about giving tech support.
Thank you. There you are.
Nick Salloway, I'm a founder at Curious. From the tech world, but not an expert on cyber at all. So my question is, to what extent might existing technologies, such as the blockchain, or emerging tech like quantum computing, potentially change the nature of cyber warfare, or even eliminate it, do you think?
It will not be eliminated because, well, great question, Nick. So blockchain and quantum computing, slightly different. So blockchain is a root of trust between computers to generate a singular information. Quantum is the way that will influence the way that you sign and decipher content, slightly different. I think quantum will change radically the way the world works because you will have better protection and so on and so forth. Blockchain is a great technology. Both of them suffer from the same things. Number one, you need a lot of computational power and energy. By the way, for blockchain, you are harvesting so much amount of energy. It's becoming almost impossible to create a good blockchain environment. It's very complicated. Quantum computing is, I think, a decade before becoming reality in today's life. There's always the human factor. Always, always, always. So you can have the best quantum computer, but if the password is Nick1234, so yes, it will be a revolution. I don't think it's going to save or change everything completely. A lot of people are going to make a lot of money because they're going to say we're quantum or blockchain. I think it's going to be the next leap. I don't think it's the final leap. I don't think it's the quantum. It's a good leap forward that is about 10 years from becoming a reality.
Great question. Anyone else going to put a hand up? Yep. Oh, could have been someone over here. Here we go. I feel like, who was it? Kilroy Silk used to run around with a microphone. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, Kami Kunde from the North East Local Enterprise Partnership. How can you tell a fake company online, for businesses who are potentially looking at them as suppliers or working in partnership with them? Because there's some quite good ones on the online ones. And how can business be aware about that?
It's a phenomenal. I can't, number one. I don't know how to identify. It's a great question because you nail it to a lot of the schemes out there when somebody's portraying. So online schemes are great and interesting. I don't know. There are companies who specialize in that. Again, I don't understand the consumer side. What I do know that when I'm getting an email from someone, and if it's interesting enough, we're not asked to be enlarge anything, just something that has a business aspect. I try to read the peripheral, so I try to see Are these real people? I've tried to follow, does those people have good LinkedIn presence? If this is a state-level attack, by the way, they are covered. They build the entire background story. Usually, if that's somebody who's not on a state level, the background story will fall. So about 2 years ago, Israel and the UAE signed the Eran Accords, which led to a boom of both financial work between Israel and the UAE, and the same amount of boom of phishing schemes on LinkedIn and online. And I started answering them, saying, can you please send me information about this and this and this? And then they disappeared. So I knew it was fake, but just because of an intuition, because it was related to a very specific event. Usually, once you're published, once you have there's a PR of your company, the next 2 to 3 months, you have 50% legit emails, 50% those kind of emails. So it's easier to identify. After that, it's just some background work. The problem, if I may add, is much more complicated, again, in the infrastructure world, because then you have machine to machine speaking to each other. And that's an easier way to manipulate and cheat, because, for example, there are a lot of events where somebody is creating rogue or deceived products connected to the network. So just imagine the electricity grid in England, and then rogue meters or rogue devices are connected. It's harder to identify, and that's a way to infiltrate into the network. So if a person is involved, he can use common sense. Machines to machine is more dangerous and more complicated to identify.
It's a great question. I bought a fantastic Versace shirt during lockdown. It looked an absolute bargain at 60 quid, and it still hasn't turned up. This was in 2020, so yeah, I mean, it's an absolute nightmare for fake companies out there. Next question. Anyone else got one out there? Yeah, okay, great. One in the middle. There you are, buddy.
Stephen Saddy from Newcastle University. Just wondering, how do you stop the sesame seeds getting in the bread?
I see that you have proper education, and I'm impressed. But it's a good question. So sesame seeds are, so on the bottom layer you have the production, the PLC, okay, which makes the buns and puts the seeds on top of the bun. It's being dictated by two other machines. One of them is called EWS, Engineering Workstation, which is saying, make a bun and put seeds. And the third item is called HMI, Human Machine Interface, when somebody can change the amount of seeds. A true attack is for somebody to say, I want to change the amount and I have the privileges. So let's assume this machine, this is real life event, is protected by a password, but you're an employee of the company, you were fired, but you still have the privileges to go to access from remote. Again, not this company, but another company, but these happen endless amount of times. So you are going into the system remotely, you still have your privileges, and you say, please quadruple the amount of seeds, sesame seeds you're putting, or make it to 0, execute, and that's it. What we have done is we said, the fact that, so this is about NanoLock, we do something called zero trust at the device level. So the fact that you have a username and password, the fact that you can access the machine doesn't mean a thing. Fine. So that's infiltrating into the machine somehow. What we have done is we said the command itself, which is change from 100 seeds to 10 million seeds, must be signed by a server that we provide the end customer. So the plant is in Manchester, and headquarters is in London. So headquarters now has the ability to sign the command, change the sesame seed amount, number one, have a trail backwards seeing who made the change, and the command that we're providing is used for one machine, one engineer, one time. So it complicates a little bit the process, but this is a proper, what we call, or what is called cyber hygiene, meaning the process is now legit. There are ways to trace what happened, and the changes are not related to the fact that I know you and I gave you permission to go into the factory, which is usually, by the way, with some of our customers, security protocols are called Jorge. If Jorge let you in, you can do whatever you want because you can access the machines. And number two, the fact that you still have privileges that you kept to yourself doesn't mean a thing because we enforce that. So that's the way we prevent this. By the way, there are bigger events. So one of our customers, electricity company, people didn't pay the bill, headquartered in Rome, customers are down south in Italy. Didn't pay the bill, but there were people in the middle that didn't stop the machine, the meters from running, and they went to the people and asked them for money. Said, you own 100 euros, give me 10 euros, and you don't have to pay the bill. So it's the same logic that there are human in the middle that can harm the very technological system.
Good question. Good answer as well. Any other questions from the guys in the room at all? Yeah, there's one up there. There you go, mate.
Make him run, by the way. I'm expecting a call here.
My question is about, obviously, if you're a company that's got thousands of employees, one of the issues is that as human beings, we're really bad at remembering things. So we go for the kids' birthdays or the 1, 2, 3 or whatever else it is. Is there a way where technology is going to help us with that? Obviously, we've got that with our phones, with face recognition or whatever that is. But it would make sense that there would be a way of, for whether it be your some part of your body that recognises that it's you and it's not just putting a password in, because you end up where your passwords at home, at work, and all the rest of it, trying to remember them are all the same. So is there some technology coming that's going to go for all businesses that you can use that identifies you without actually having to put a human password in?
Two different questions. Number one, again, it's a great one. There are a lot of attempts now to move from a password into whether it's a face recognition or patterns. There's a good Israeli company called BioCatch, which is recognizing the pattern every time that you put your password in. So that's a simple answer in what can replace passwords. There are technologies to replace passwords. The second thing is, do we trust the passwords? And this goes back to, sorry, that the answer I gave before, not necessarily knowing the password or guessing the passwords means that you can do something. Password is a way to familiarize yourself with the system, then to take action, it's a different story. And lastly is not sharing those passwords. So it's all layers of the same thing, which is passwords are a good mean to introduce yourself to the system. Now every company should take a decision. Do I focus on preventing or identifying whether the password is legit? By the way, we think that's not the right way. We think that investing in trying to identify the originality of the password is not good enough, because that can be mimicked, number one, and with enough. So I didn't bring the video, but usually when I'm just presenting, when we come to a customer, we usually take one of his devices and we show him how easy it is to hack it. And I'm usually presenting with a product from a company called Philips Lighting, Signify, called U, and I'm showing like how an insider can play with the lights and do whatever he wants. So given enough time and resources, everything is penetrable. Everything, whether it's a military thing or a consumer product. Infiltration is imminent, it will happen. So our vision is to prevent the outcome, what you can do when you're inside. So you can take from this whatever you want for your enterprise, either stop from using not using the proper passwords to replacing password with another thing. We recommend to do both replacing password with a different technology and trying to stop what happens if somebody gets in, because from our experience, 100% can be cracked and infiltrated. Hopefully that was answering your question.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the new question coming from now.
Okay, you seen one? You spotted one?
No, I'm just hoping
You
for
just
that.
want to keep me running, don't you?
Oh, correct.
Eran, I'm knackered and I'm slightly hungover thanks to you. Fantastic. Any more questions? Get in. Oh, Danny, is it a serious question, Danny? It's not serious. All right, Danny's speaking after the lunch break. But come on then, what is the... How many locks do you have on your house in Israel, Eran?
One which is malfunctioning, because it's not the issue. A lock is not enough. Look, I have a lock on my door. Can somebody come from the window? The answer is yes. Can somebody come from the garden? The answer is yes. a lock is not enough. It's just not enough. You got to make sure that, you got to assume, that's what we recommend. Sorry for about the serious answer. You got to recommend that to assess and work under the assumption that somebody will get in, somehow, always.
So the answer is to have nothing good in the house.
No, the answer is put the keys first, the first level of protection, and put the living room 4th floor.
Great stuff. Look, fantastic. I found that really fascinating, Eran. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your words. And thank you as well, guys, for questions. Of course, Eran's going to be around for the day as well if you want to grab him or any of our speakers today to ask any more questions. But I'd like you all to put your hands together, please, for our second speaker
Thank you so
today.
much.
Eran Fine. Eran, thank you. Thank you, Eran. We really appreciate you coming.